constantly brought up that name. One was a friend from Canada, which I attended her leadership training. That name came up, and a few other friends who are, I would say, from the realm of not religion but spiritual and intellectual, very highly intellectual friends, brought up the name several times. And Anne shared with me that you guys are having this. I think this is a sign. So let me jump in and connect with you guys. Yeah, so it's trusting the instinct and the feeling. And I'm really glad I'm here. I'm very new to Buckminster Fuller. I did a bit of read up about it. And I'm also reading up a bit of material and sent to me from Kelly as well. So how I'm feeling is feeling lighthearted, feeling connected with the people. I think we are literally from around the world here. I'm from Malaysia, in a place called Klang. To my friend, I'll say that I'm in a cowboy town because it's near to the ocean. Literally, all the container reach to the area called Klang here, where they send all the things around Malaysia. So it's a cowboy town because literally we don't really need to. We can move freely in many ways in this area, even though we're in lockdown. It's quite relaxed over here. And that's how I'm feeling. That's what I want to share. Really nice connecting to you guys.
CJ, did you read the rules of the call?
The rules of the call, I would say
No, I sent them to you when Anne asked me to send the link. Just read the rules, and
sure.
At the end of the call, you can tell me whether you agree or don't agree.
Sure, I'll run through that. Thank you.
Now you've got to pass it on to somebody else.
Okay, I'm passing on to Rafa.
So Raffers, how do you feel, and what do you want to get out of it today?
Thank you, CJ. Very welcome, mate. Welcome to Bucky World. Well, how I'm feeling? Well, I'm feeling actually great. Happy to be here with all these like-minded people. All of us going absolutely crazy about Bucky and going to the trouble of trying to understand what he means and how to apply, and trying to make again Bucky contemporary. So I think that's a great challenge that we face every week here. So what I look forward to get out today is just more understanding and more application. So that's how I feel, and that's what I expect. Dear old man Henry, how are you feeling, mate? What do you expect to get out today?
Thanks, Raffers. Yeah, feeling old. Yeah, feeling pretty good today. Energized, had a bit of a rest. Been watching the Olympics, actually. Olympics is always good. It's an example, I guess, of ephemeralization, ever more of ever less. You see progression over time, technology, and how far people can push the human body, and also some techniques and things. So it's always interesting. Plus, New Zealand won the sevens. Women's got gold, Kelly.
You haven't got very far to go, mate. You're only about 9 or 10 behind.
So it's really good. Yeah, welcome to the new guys. I mean, you don't have to know anything. You just have to deliver your special case, because everyone has their own special case, your own experience, and that just contributes, which is always adds to the wealth of knowledge. So welcome and just be a part of it. Susan, how are you feeling, and what do you want to get out of today's call?
Feeling super happy to be here, and I'm looking to collapse the distance between us and to profit from all these new perspectives. Stanley, how do you feel, and what would you like to get out of today?
Same thing applies to you, Stanley. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you're from, and then how you feel.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me here. My name is Stanley. Anne invited me over for today's session, and I was told that today's session, usually the Sunday discussion are about Buckminster Fuller's ideas and concepts. And well, I work with Anne. I'm a teacher in an international school, together with CJ. So in this call here, I know Anne, CJ, and Anna as well. I'm pretty excited to be here. To be honest, I am not really sure what this is all going to be all about, but I'm pretty open-minded. So I'm pretty excited to see what do we have in store for today. And well, on the subject of Buckminster Fuller, prior to what Anne told me a couple of weeks back, all I knew about Buckminster Fuller was that he was a scientist, that he came out with the buckyball, Buckminster fullerene. Now, me being a chemistry teacher, I know Buckminster fullerene, but Buckminster Fuller, but I didn't know him as a name, as a scientist. I don't know anything beyond that. It was only about 2 or 3 weeks ago when Anne exposed us more on Buckminster Fuller, where I became more captivated. I was pretty impressed, and as I dig a little bit deeper, I became very I was not only impressed, but I was drawn to it, because I realized that Buckminster Fuller, he was not only into science, but he was into spirituality and consciousness as well, and the merging of both spirituality and science. And I think this is amazing, because usually when people look at it from one perspective or the another, and when you put two together, it paints a full picture. And this is what I'm very interested in. So I hope that answered the questions posed to me. Thank you.
So how do you feel, and what do you want to get out of this?
What do I want to get out of it? To be honest, I'm pretty open-minded. So I don't know. I'm open.
Okay, so you're going to be putty in our hands, and we're just going to take you wherever we want to take you, right?
Yeah, for today, yeah, yeah, sure. I'm gonna
Okay, we won't be robbing any banks in Malaysia today, but we put you on notice. We could tomorrow.
Okay, sure. Good to know.
Pass it on, Nate.
So,
Stanley, pass it.
who hasn't been?
Go,
Can I
Anna.
pass it to Anne?
You can pass it on to your friend, Anna.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
hi.
Hi.
I'm really excited. This is my second time. I'm looking forward to. I saw the picture, the conscious awareness, the brain up there. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, want to know more about that part. So who has not been through yet?
You can go to Catalina and Peter if you like.
Okay. Go ahead, Catalina. Is it Catalina?
Yeah, how do you feel and what do you expect?
Yeah, how do you feel and what do you expect?
Okay, I want everyone to understand as a design function, we're taught to answer questions.
Oh,
So if you don't ask a question, you may not get the answer you want. So it's how do you feel? What do you expect? Okay, so pass it on, Anna.
yeah, okay, I pass to Catalina.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everyone. Good to see everyone. And welcome the new ones. I feel pretty good. I feel pretty joyful today. Always very I don't know, happy to see the people that you got to connect and relate somehow as a family, and related at some level, untouchable, and yet a type of family. So I'm always grateful to be here, and I always look forward to see what new concepts do I apprehend, or what new gems are actually comes from this group, because that's always that it comes is actually gems, regardless if it comes from an emotion or just the thought or just for the sake of being. So that's how I feel. That's what I want to take away. Pete, how do you feel, and what do you expect to get out of today?
Thanks, Kat. I'm feeling quite relaxed. I've spent a good part of this week revisiting ancient prophecies from various different cultures. And there's a similarity that runs through all of them, is that the times that we are living in are called different things by different cultures, but it's basically the shitstorm before the good stuff. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world at the moment that actually upsets me. Everything from censorship to hunger to homelessness to war, and the use of fear and intimidation by governments and corporations, etc. And I, for a while this week, was feeling quite, I don't know if it was pissed off or sad or overwhelmed or what it was, but it was something, all of those. And the further I read into the ancient prophecies, it actually said, all of them say that the shit's going to hit the fan and it's going to get ugly, and that the consciousness of fear, we're going to get the opportunity to choose as individuals and as a collective to either stay in fear and limitation and scarcity, or open our hearts and come into love and compassion and consciousness. And every major ancient prophecy actually says humanity's going to make it. There's a couple that say it's going to be 50-50, that we could destroy ourselves again, like we have in Atlantis and a few other cultures. But I'm feeling quite hopeful, because this call is actually proof of why I'm hopeful. Apologies for the dog barking at birds. There's a small group of people who are looking to design their world and their part of their world and the contribution they make to the world and the ripple effect that they make to their world, so that it works for everyone. And every change in history has come from a small group of people committed to making a change. So I'm feeling actually, you know, the antithesis of what I was feeling earlier in the week. I'm feeling quite hopeful about humanity. But we've got a lot of work to do. My brother Steve, how do you feel, and what would you like to take away today?
You're on mute, Steve.
Well, Peter, thanks for the disturbing news. You know, I can remember about 20 years ago, I read the Bhagavad Gita, you know, and there's this big battle going on between Arjuna, the general, and all of his cousins and uncles. And Arjuna has a big argument with Krishna saying, why would I go fight and kill this guy? He's my freaking relative. And how do I know I'm right? And the conversation that goes on is amazing. And Peter, you just described the whole issue. You know, it's actually an internal battle. What Krishna explains to Arjuna is it's an internal battle. There's nothing external going on at all. Yet I look around and I see a lot of crisis. I see a lot of people hurting. So, and somehow I feel like the conversation that we have on this call somehow seems like a pathway out of that. You know, maybe if I come to know who I am and I come to know the nature of the universe and my place in it, then maybe all that other chaos and stuff is easier to take. So I'm here to resolve some of the chaos. So I'm not much, you know, not a lot of expectation. So that's what I want to do. And I'm real tired. How am I feeling? I'm real tired. I had a concert day today and I went and performed a bunch of Beatles songs, not many, but heard my son's band play and had a whole day of concerts. And I just got home. I'm freaking exhausted. And but I'm already uplifted by being on this call with your marvelously encouraging conversation, Peter. Thank you very much. So good. Philemon, have you shared yet?
Yeah, Manu.
Okay, Manu, how are you feeling and what do you expect? What are your expectations for today? What do you want to get out of today?
I've got a feeling. I've got a feeling. Yeah, I feel good. I got a good food. I'm grateful of all these new faces, Stanley, Anna, and CJ. What does CJ stand for? I don't know, but CJ, good. CJ. Now,
He's your partner.
What aspect of
future, Manu?
What aspect of this from this is quite simple. You know, I'm not kind of worried. I'm apprehensive, but you see, the world is a world of tensegrity. that is tension and compression. So my view of it is not to go to understand what is going on globally, but to be able to shape locally and keep that local in, I wouldn't say sync, in a tension equilibrium with the whole. And I would like us very much to kind of, while defining a lot of things, to do it in a way that we steer on and focus to applications that are going to change local environments in the way that they resonate towards the main purpose of generalized principles being always true everywhere. So I hope it wasn't too complicated. That is my expectation. Joe, how do you feel?
I feel great. I feel great. Thank you for asking me, New. And I feel energized by all the new faces here. And I'm really looking to learn how to do more with less. And that's what I'm really looking forward to in this particular meeting this evening. Also to challenge any kind of Malthusian types of philosophies. So with that, I will say, Kelly.
No, I think
John, forgive me, John. I knew it was either one of the two. Forgive me for, how do you feel and what would you like to get out of today?
I'm feeling great, Joe. Very grateful to be here. It's been a good week. I've had a really mixed week. I took a trip out to Condinnon in the country, saw all the crops growing and the clean air and lots of water everywhere. It's been very wet in Western Australia. But for those who don't know, Condinnon's farming country about 300 kilometres east of Perth. And I also this week gave a presentation to a Rotary Club on Buckminster Fuller, which was interesting. And in the preparation, I went through a number of Bucky's quotes, and some of them were back from the 1920s through to the 60s. And just amazing reading those quotes to sort of refresh. Some of them I'd read before, some of them I hadn't read before, but just getting some insights into how Bucky was thinking, if that's possible, and how far ahead of his time he was. So I'd just like to finish today feeling I know just a little bit more than I did when I started the call. So Kelly, have we had everybody?
I'm pretty certain everyone's gone now.
No, me.
Oh, Ace.
Ace, director.
Ace. We've had everybody.
Oh, sorry. I need to forget to rename myself all the time.
Absolutely. My apologies to you, Anne. How are you feeling and what do you expect to get out of today?
Okay, hold on. I've got Anne. Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kelly, for, I feel, actually, I feel proud, to have, more of my team joining here, the group meetings, and being part of this whole discussion. Actually, it's not just a discussion. I feel like this is literally a movement. Okay, and just a little bit about Stanley and CJ. They're very, very modest. I've got two engineers here, two engineers who chose to teach little children, and teenagers, and to make an impact on their lives. And they're heading up two of my initiatives in the school. One is heading the entrepreneur program that we are not just teaching in our school, we're taking it out of the to other countries even. And Stanley is part of this initiative that we've just started last year, which is the Environmental Sustainable School. So, and you're right, Bucky's name kept coming up, in many different directions. And so when I told them about these meetings on Sundays, they got very thrilled, and here we are. So yes, so it's about moving together as a team, not just my team, but together with the group here. That's what I'm looking forward to. Thank you very much. So Kelly, how do you feel and what do you hope to get out today?
Well, I'm thankful that you're landing your plane amongst us. So we appreciate that. I'm very grateful for that to start with. And I've met a lot of the people that Anne works with. I've sat on the floor in board meetings with them. And, you know, literally, that was the board meeting. We're all sitting around the floor. Yeah, you know, whatever, looking to design a company of the future, and it started on the floor. So I'm very appreciative that you're here, and team. How do I feel? Well, I've had a week of really ins and outs and betweens and arounds. I you know, for the last 6 months, they've been wanting me to do a serious physical. Now get out there and let's test your heart. And, you know, first of all, they had to see whether I had a heart. So they started looking for the heart and they found one. So take that one off, I got a heart. And it's not so bad as it turns out. So other than the fact that they put a lot of crap in my body to do their tests, it turned out pretty well for me. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that the body's still functioning okay. And then I had a week where, you know, I for some reason, I'm a guy that just hangs in there and sticks around for you know, for whatever goes. But I've been battling a civil case, John, for about 3 years now, and I won it. And it was just perseverance. When I say I won it, nobody really won it, because what a waste of time talking about money. But, you know, in the end, we got a little bit of money. And so I guess I can say I won it, but, you know, really not that good a thing. I really didn't like what happened with it. And I think we could do a lot better than talking about who did what and, you know, how you're going to compensate. And the only way that we know how to compensate is money. It didn't work for me, but, you know, apparently I won. And then I started thinking about the words that we had to go for this week. It's like, I have all these pages open and I'm thinking, you know, which one do you put with which one? And, you know, with Fuller, doesn't matter. It really does not matter which one you choose, because, you know, in his definitions, he's all inclusive. And so you can apply any one of his things to just about everything. When we talk about the Olympics and it's being on, I don't know whether anyone's paid much attention to the lane ropes. You know, the ropes, when they're swimming down the lanes, and they've got those ropes, and they're setting all these new world records. You know, on this call, we talk about boundaries and how boundaries create certain things. Just think where they would be with the world records without those ropes, and really the design of those ropes. I don't know whether anyone's really had a good look at the rope and what's on the rope. Has anyone seen them? It's absolutely precision at its greatest, because you'll see on the rope, so the rope goes through and you've got these two flexing, they're moving either way. And they got a little ball in the middle that keeps it out. And when you start to look at the lanes and you say, how do you get all these ripples and dissipate the ripples? Well, those dissipate the ripples. And so what happens is, as they're floating along, you start to see technology without even thinking about it, but it's precessional technology. So if you start to see that and you see all the things, and then I don't know whether anyone watches, but in Australia, we've got a super swimmer, and he was describing the races, and he was talking about it as they're coming over and their hands gripping the water. But then he's saying as they get tired, their hands can't grip the water and they're swimming through the bubbles because they don't have the clean water, because they don't have it. And you start to realize again, these are all things that are all around us and that we don't think about, but they think about it so that they can reduce the time in a race, a swimming race. And then when you see the pictures, I don't know whether people have seen the pictures of the water coming out and all the bubbles and the spiraling of the water, and, you know, all these bubbles coming at you, and think, oh, how the heck did we miss that in the last Olympics? But the clarity and the vision of it, you know, when you see it and you see the separation and the coming back together, You know, all the stuff that you're talking about. And so, Manu, when you're talking about tension, compression, equilibrium, it's not tension, equilibrium, it's the two of them. Tension and compression have to be both in consideration, because you're looking for that equilibrium, you're looking for that flexibility, if you like. So all of a sudden, it's right in front of our eyes, and do we notice it? Do we actually see it? Wow, that world record was created by that lane rope. And how many people would have thought of the lane rope as being a contributor to the world record? The depth of the pool, the water in the pool, whether they can grip the water or they're gripping air or whatever the hell they're doing. But that's all design. And that's why I think it's so important for us to understand that it's all around us. And so when we're talking about Fuller, it's all around us. So we can pick any subject you like and anything you want, and then apply it to what his thinking is. And then we say, okay, how do I apply it? So there's an application. If now, next time you go to your swimming pool and you see a pool rope, you have a look at that pool rope and see how it dissipates energy and how it allows each Olympian to be their best in that lane, in the boundary lane. And that's what Manu's talking about when he talks about proximal advantage. Am I correct in saying that, Manu? The proximity of the lane and now has an advantage for that swimmer because of those two ropes. Anyway, Steve, I wanted to say that I went a little bit sideways on our two words today, because what I want to do is I actually want to get a tetra of words, like the fourness of the words. And when I thought through it, I realized that we had to have another word that we haven't discussed. So some of the words today, I chose one word that nobody really had much consideration for. And I hope I haven't overstepped my bounds here, Steve, but I added the word distribute. Are you okay with that? So Steve, is he with me or no?
I'm with you. I put my thumb up. I was being muted.
Okay, so if
you brought up fourness, and there's this duality of plus and minus. You always have these pluses and minuses. And so I've been contemplating these words in groups with pluses and minuses and dualities and fournesses. So this is great. More to consider.
Okay, so we'll do the same format as last week. John, you're going to read for me?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go back to the words in a minute, but the theme of today is ephemeralization. And before we start, how many people have heard the word ephemeralization? Yeah, so what does it mean to you?
Doing more with less.
More with less, yeah. Okay, but it's more than doing just more with less. What is the ultimate result of ephemeralization?
You can do everything with nothing.
Doing everything with nothing.
Yes.
Could we say that might be the power of words?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, last week we talked about bite. And now all of a sudden, 1947 or whatever it is now today, and we've got all this technology around this single word. And then you see the power of it. Would you say that word's ephemeralization?
I kind of thought about this word, right? Because I'm an English teacher, so the word ephemeral, right? We are familiar with it, but I don't know how ephemeral became ephemeralization. The way Baki, why did he choose this word? You know,
what does ephemeral mean?
I really want to know.
What does ephemeral mean?
Like something that comes very, and then it goes off. You know, it just
short-lived.
Like you can't really grasp.
Ephemeral is short-lived. So you have all these events that are short-lived. Now all of a sudden you want something that lives longer. So when you look at media today, it's all ephemeral.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of times people don't get that it's quite entropic. And our job is to say, okay, what by decision, we can say what stays, what goes. And so when you say ephemeralization, he's saying it was short-lived, but now it lives on under its own steam. Would that make sense to you then, Anne?
Okay, let me think on that one.
Well, but when you look at it, the world is very ephemeral right now, and we can measure how ephemeral it is very quickly. If we look at our measurement points, we look at just a simple thing like, I was watching the races last night, the 100-meter sprints last night, and they were eliminating people for being, what was it, 0.100 of a head start on the rest of the field. Now, how in the hell do you work that out? The start is ephemeral, right? But what's the rule?
Yep. Okay.
What the rule at that moment says that if you move or twitch, or I don't even know if you could twitch in that time, could you? But they get a camera on it and they say, you took an unfair advantage. I mean, the advantage, how long was that advantage lived for? By the time they get to the other side, they can say, in that 10 seconds, that made the difference. So now all of a sudden you get the rules, right? I've always thought about this ephemeralization an awful lot myself, and I'm thinking, how do I really understand ephemeralization? And I don't think there is anything more powerful than words and language to set up ephemeralization. Comments or questions?
I have to say on this. We discussed ephemeral and taking advantage. Taking advantage at one point is always ephemeral. I take advantage because you have a word that is dynamic, that is in motion, that is moving. I take advantage of, but the crux of ephemeralization is a process by which we take advantage different bits successively in a way that we have identified a pattern for use. That's what ephemeralization means. So ephemeral comes from the very process of dividing. But as you're dividing and things are changing, how do you identify time after time taking advantage of it? That's how, in a pattern way, in a duration, it becomes something that is ephemeralized. Because you are doing every time that it repeats, you're doing more with less. And the accumulative effect of it is actually small. But you never reach it in reality because it's a very process of the pursuit of veritas.
So if you look at that, Steve, can you see why the importance of distribute? The constant distribute. So we can sit around and we can talk all day long and it's ephemeral. Then all of a sudden you want that to be driven forward. When you drive it forward, you're distributing a concept.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's why I chose ephemeralization to go with the two words collaboration and distribution.
Yeah. And it's important that in probability, you always talk about a distribution, a statistic.
Yeah, it's
you
good.
can't catch a point, but it is a distribution that has a sense. It is a pattern.
Okay,
you see,
John,
when you talk about the weather, like for example, in a weather forecast, it is a distribution of a variable or different variable distribution that is identified as a pattern and that allow us to kind of forecast the weather. And then You take that forecast and then you plan ahead. Compared to somebody that went ahead with that information, the results are going to be mind-boggling different.
All right, so let's keep going, John, or we'll be here. We won't get past
Are
ephemeral.
you going back up, Kelly, or are you starting at ephemeralization?
Ephemeralization is where we're starting, and then we'll go back to the words with Steve.
Okay. Ephemeralization, a term coined by R. Buckminster Fuller, is the ability of technological advancement to do more and more with less and less until eventually you can do everything with nothing. Fuller's vision was that ephemeralization will result in ever increasing standards of living for an ever-growing population despite finite resources. The concept has been embraced by those who argue against Malthusian philosophy, according to Wikipedia.
Okay, so I took that out because it's really hard to find very much about what Fuller says about it, but there you go. Comments or questions on that? See, think what the driver was. Think what the driver of fear and all that. We've got this Malthusian philosophy. There's not enough, right? And all of a sudden, how long have we been pounding there's not enough? We pounded there was not enough when there was, 500 million people. We'll never support 500 million. There's not enough when we got to 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, 5 billion. There's not enough. But it just keeps pounding it out. So this thing that's doing everything with nothing and creating fear is something as simple as there's not enough. Comments or questions?
In the metaphysical kind of link over, I would say that, and again, I don't mean to be wishy-washy, but we talk about the Atlantean, very technology-based society at the same time as the Lemurian society. And the Lemurian society was doing everything from the energy of consciousness. And so in this way, for me, it's almost been drawn out into these bigger fables about how consciousness on this planet could operate.
I have something to add here as well. Actually, it's fascinating to notice that although the Malthusian philosophy has literally been debunked, like in the sense that the world doesn't quite work the way the Malthusian philosophy shows up, and we see that we have been able to do more and more with less for the longest time, and yet the number of people out there believing in that that space of lack and space of scarcity and space of we're not going to survive, we're not going to be able to feed, and the resources are just not enough. It really boggles the fact that we can all see it and yet people still believe it. So that's the one that we have to do something about.
Well, apply to ephemeralization. Apply that thought to ephemeralization.
Because actually, if you look at it, we don't have enough space for farming. We've gone vertical. We're using a lot less space. We're just going up, or we're going down. Housing as well. They're going underground. Use of space. So that's doing more with a lot less, and a whole bunch of other things. Like we're looking at biosteel. Biosteel is actually the thread. Actually, they're using webs, spider webs, and they're getting it out of sheep because they did some DNA. They kind of did a hybrid of the DNA of a sheep with spiders, and now you can get silk from sheep's milk, goat's milk, and it's called biosteel. It's really, really strong, and it can even be used for Kevlar and vests, and also to hold jet planes landing on battleships and all that. It can be used to make those ropes to hold it back. And then we also have the air foam is the other. Have you heard of the air foam? It's
and what you're saying is we know technology can advance us.
Yes,
so
correct.
Why doesn't it?
Exactly.
We have
It doesn't
distribution.
It doesn't because in the definition there is something that is embedded, but that we always overlook. The embedded is that the more efficient you become, you should avoid accumulation, because if you accumulate into one individual or into one group, that's something else. So there's the notion of distribution. That is embedded, but it's always overlooked. There are technologies, but we always, the paradigm we go about is to accumulate. Somebody appropriates it, appropriation, and make it his. And as a consequence, since energy always flows and flows to the point of, to the line of resistance, it goes to that place and accumulate there, and it defeats the purpose for what it was. It doesn't live the standards.
So it's time for us to say Malthusian doesn't work. We know that, and then we have to move past that. Who's trying to comment?
I was just going to say it's a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset.
Yeah.
And then essentially even things like you think about things like hydroponic farming or things like that, or drip irrigation, things that advance us, as well as, you know, that's an abundance mindset. How am I going to get more out of less? And so I think that's the distinction. It's a growth mindset versus the fixed mindset.
I'm looking at the theory of Malthusian now, and towards the end it says here, unless population growth was arrested by such means as famine, war, or the control of reproduction through the moral restraint, or these days through whatever else they want to put in your body. And I look at it, and I think humans fear the future, so they keep looking at the past. So Malthusian, he lived from 1766 to 1834, and we're still invested in a lot of that stuff: war, famine, and population. We're still having these conversations now, yeah, from 300 years ago, whatever it was. We're intelligent apes that can't think forward. Like I was having a conversation yesterday with someone because Dubai now does seed clouding. When I was a little boy in school, they were talking about that, just like what Anne was talking about now with Kevlar vests made out of spider webs. I remember reading that 20, 25 years ago that they were developing this stuff. Now, I was talking to someone and saying, oh, that's disgusting that we're making it rain. I go, why is that? That's good, the deserts. If we can make the deserts fertile with rain, we can feed so many parts of the world. We shouldn't be messing with nature. I go, we're natural beings. Well, why are we messing with nature? Maybe we're making it better. We're adding something. We're making it more abundant, more rich. No, we shouldn't be messing with it, he goes. I didn't want to get further into the conversation, but that's somebody that thinks that people should be dying of starvation if I wanted to take him down that road. But I wasn't into an argument. But we can't think forward. We go to the back, to the past for context, and we're still stuck there. We revere it. That's how backwards we are.
What's starvation got to do with growth?
What's starvation got
to do with growing?
Distribution.
Yeah, when you look at starvation and you say, oh, there's not enough to feed people, so we got to make sure we get ours first.
Yeah.
But what's it got to do with it? I mean, we destroy as much food as we eat.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So at some moment you got to get past.
We destroy far more than we eat, actually.
What's that?
We actually destroy somewhere between 8 and 15 times more than what we eat.
So it's got nothing to do with can we grow it? Can we feed people? It's got to do with other matters. And so Malthusian is really as much economic as anything else. And the economics are run on that. And it's time to tell the economics to keep your mouth shut and let's get on with the job. You know, you think about what's going on right now. It's being driven by economists. And they're coming from there's not enough vaccine. Oh, please. There's not enough this and there's not enough of that. But if we come as Philemon's saying, is if we look forward rather than backwards, and if we started to look at ephemeralization going forward, what is it that you want to ephemeralize? What is it? What is it you want to create around ephemeralization? Surely that's design. And starting to say, look, all of the things that they're talking about may or may not be viable as a regenerative process. But ultimately, we're looking for regenerative processes. We're a regenerative process in and of ourselves. So it's like somehow, how do we get to that moment? And when I mean, I've heard of this Malthusian since I was born almost. There's not enough. And now all of a sudden we're still in this, there's not enough. We've got to change that. So John, let's keep moving. Otherwise we won't get to Steve.
Be frozen.
Are you there, John?
And measurement technologies in human development, for example, started with a comprehensive measure such as a ruler.
Okay, so what's being said right there? What is important for where we're at today from where we were at yesterday?
We're still using a bloody ruler.
Well, no, we're calibrating. It's just calibration. When you talk about calibration, how in the hell do you calibrate some guy breaking on the line at 0.1, you know, 0.100? The effect that's going to have over 10 seconds, right? That's just pure measurement. And as we start to understand we can measure better, can we start applying that in the way that we can create a future because we understand calibration? Fuller's, I know a little bit about something. And so instead of not understanding, we know a little bit about something, we're fed these absolute asinine messages that seem to hold us in fear. As long as I can remember, we've been propagandizing fear. So at that moment, it's like, if we're going to design something and we're being pragmatic, and I have to say, that's probably the quality I have, is I'm just practical. You know, I touched a burning stove, it burnt my finger. Okay, don't touch that stove again. That's just practical. And now, and can we pass it on? Do we know an awful lot of stuff that we could pass on that we're not? And why not? Anyway, keep going. So we got the such as a roller. Now we've got.
Is John back?
I don't know, is it?
The compressive technique reached an upper limit with a rod. For longer measures, a tensive measure such as a string or rope was used. This reached an upper limit with sagging of a string. Next was the surveyor's telescope, visual. This reached an upper limit with curvature of the earth. Next was radio triangulation, abstract electrical. The technological progression is continuing, increase in length measuring ability per pound of measurement of instrument, with no apparent upper limit according to Fuller.
Comments or questions?
In the construction game, what just popped in my head about how much more efficient things have become because of technology on how we measure things. From using Google, from a roofer now not even coming on site to measure in a person's property to understand how to quote the installation of a new roof, to back in the old days, somebody would come into the office and get a tape measure, where now they come with their little laser measurers. They just stand on each corner of the room and they're out of the room in 3 minutes with all the measurements calibrated, taken, ready to quote. So
have you been, you probably don't watch the golf, but has anyone watched the golf in the Olympics? Those guys stand where their ball is, they project something, and they get the exact distance, wind measurement, everything for their next shot. Just exactly what Philemon's saying. The guy that's leading it right now, they actually show him making the decision based on the information coming back to him. And he'll say, well, I'm here, I've got to go left, boom, 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 this many meters. this stroke I'm going to take, I'll use this club, hit it, and boom, you see him. And then it's only the way his body moves and all the other elements, but it's that precise now.
You know what? You just made me think about Kelly. I was thinking golf, and I'm thinking, poof, how do they do it? I wouldn't even have an idea what they do that. As a fisherman, with my lure, fishing in the mangroves, knowing the weight of my lure, knowing the wind, and how I actually understood what you just said in a golf context with fishing, because your lure is a $50, $60 lure if it gets stuck in the mangrove, and you're trying to put it pretty much in a gap that big continuously. And I totally forgot that that's a skill that I have. And you change the lure, which means you now have to change your thinking because the weight changes, the shape of the lure changes. Interesting. That's what I got from that little.
Again, that's all calibration all around us. And the second we get to those calibrations, look how fast that the technology of that golf course is going to take off from a guy that might win the Olympic medal in golf. And this is how he did it. You don't need drugs. I mean, there's a technology advantage in that of itself. So anyway, let's keep going. Manu?
We may say that thinking about the truth alters truth, but only to the extent of defining it. We may always clarify and redefine the truth by making it more comprehensively considerate and more incisively exquisite. Truth alters truth only by refining the definition. The substance of a sensing and instrumental control of a physical means of communication is always refinable and tends towards the ephemeralization of doing ever more with ever less. But you can never get to the exact, most economical statement of the truth. For the very communication will have ephemeralized to pure metaphysics. Truths are like generalized principles, inter-accommodative and non-intercontradictory. Truths are special case realizations of the generalized principles. By these very aspects are they discovered to be truth.
Comments or questions?
Video number 1 of your little series, mate. You go into truths a lot with a quote that sucked you into Bucky, you said. Took a screenshot of it over here. And that ties in nicely with that paragraph. Just talking about the truth. Because I was thinking, what is truth? My truth is different to your truth. But then when you marry it into a generalized principle, that eliminates all the conditioning, the belief systems around it, all this kind of stuff. I didn't realize your little 5.5-minute video number 1 in the series until I just heard that paragraph now. That goes in nicely with it.
Okay, there you go. Keep going, Manu, and then I'm going to pass over to Steve in a minute here.
The Stone Age logic said that the wider and heavier the walls, the more happily secure will be the inhabitants. The advent of metal alloys in the 20th century has brought an abrupt change from the advantage of structural ponderousness to the advantage of structural lightness. This is at the heart of all. Ephemeralization, that is the Dynaxion principle of doing ever more with ever less weight, time, and ergs, unit of measuring energy, per each given level of functional performance. With an average recycling rate for all metals of 22 years, and with comparable design improvements in performance per pound, ephemeralization means that ever more people are being served at ever higher standard with the same old materials.
Okay. Comments or questions before we pass on to Steve?
Well, Henry, go on first. I can see that you have something to say.
I just thought it was interesting before, Kelly, you said, why aren't we advancing? Kelly?
So what? So why aren't we advancing? You're
Yeah.
asking me the question.
You made that comment, and I thought, why would you say that when technologically we are kind of advancing? We're using a lot of the tools that have been created and are getting better over time.
So why do I say we're not advancing? Because we're ephemeralization is on Malthusian. So whilst technology is advancing, and we're not saying, okay, that's now an absolute design position, but what instead we're saying, look at the people that are being disadvantaged. We notice them a lot more than say what we might have done 20 years ago. So that there's an advancement in that. Sooner or later, we're going to have to chew hard on whatever we're doing and saying, you know, this is the way we're heading. And this idea, you know, for me personally, you know, I think I've got a metabolic rate in my life, who I am, and I don't want to live beyond my life because I want to get to my next life. So I might join Susan in some of that thought, where it's, to me, I want to constantly be regenerative. And I don't think we get to that idea of regenerative as a beingness, as a Homo sapien. Does that answer your question, Henry?
Right. Okay.
Okay, part of answering Henry's question also is to say, what is our is us here, function, or our species function in the universe?
Well, that's the question. That's the question he's asking, isn't it? What is our function?
Yes.
But Bucky gave an answer that satisfies me.
So what is it?
That we are transceivers and solvers of local problems for the integrity of the universe. That's our role. Now, the question that you have to ask—
not to make money. Is that what you're trying to tell me here?
No, it's not to make money. Let me continue on that. Now,
but we're here to make money, aren't we?
Now, the state of affairs in our biosphere today, is it local or not?
Global.
That's the question I'm asking.
No.
It's not
limited
to.
No.
To me, it's local. At the scale of universe, it's local.
Yeah.
So we have to face that and solve it. And we solve it by casting forwards angles of hearing. What I mean by that is that there is what we call the radiative division. But we have the ability and the power to decide on something. But the process that we decide, we leave it, we measure feedbacks, and we must always adjust, as Steve says.
Mm-hmm.
And we adjust in the changing world. So if we adjust in the changing world, we're never going to catch the rainbow because it's always going to move. But we know that we are improving. We know that we are doing more with less because we are bank what we know in the account of the integrity of the universe. And we are ready to discount what we don't know or what we know that comes into contradiction of a new knowledge or what is true or what appears to be true. And that is the process of it. Ephemeralization is a process. It is not a generalized principle, it is a kind, and that's what it says there. It is the way we choose to navigate in a way that we do the best for ourselves and for our integrity in the universe with the least. In other words, also, that is how we use noise, how we progressively crunch on noise. There's always noise around.
Comments or questions before I pass on to Steve?
Well, I want to comment before it gets passed to me.
Well, you can make your comment and then take over. How's that?
Yeah. I'll tell you, my brain is swimming somewhere between goats having silk stronger than Kevlar, and my brain is blown. But I want to comment about Manu's comment about local, because I think if I say about our problems today, and we talk about climate change or global warming, most of us see those problems as like global problems. We see them over there. But I think it's very critical to have this understanding that whatever I'm seeing is local to where I am. And so for me to talk about global warming is a generality that we'll be talking about that forever. But if I can talk about my situation and you can talk about your situation, and then we somehow work together, word number one, collaborate, as we work together based on your local situation and my local situation, I think we can solve global warming. But if we're talking about global warming on a global scale, we can't solve that. I can only solve what's in front of me. And to me, this gets to another issue here that underlies these words, but rather than just keep talking.
Steve, would you call it, I mean, I've got this thing about global warming.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you call it biosphere reacting?
Yeah. Well, maybe it's biosphere regeneration, and I'm just getting in the way.
Yeah, but it's actually it's a reaction to an action.
Sure.
Then what we're measuring is resultants.
Exactly. The global weather patterns are responding to cow farts. And we don't realize how important cow farts are to the global situation, but they're huge. That methane is worse than the cars.
Yeah.
You know, so we're actually focused on car emissions when we ought to be focused on cow farts. So I'm going to turn that over to you guys.
So you're going to leave us right in the cow shit.
Exactly right.
All right, we'll start. So if people remember, last week we had cooperate. So we're looking to get to 4 words. So we had agreement, cooperate, collaborate, and distribution. So agreement and cooperate were our first 2 words, and then we're saying to have one half of a word system, I want to add collaborate and distribute. Does everyone understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you start with an agreement. So we agree, this is the local area. This is the swimming pool. This is the golf. This is what we're agreeing to look at, and we're going to solve this problem. Now, those are such ridiculous problems to solve, but anyway, that's what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And so we agree that we're going to solve that problem. Then we start to cooperate. So we get the cooperation, and now all of a sudden we collaborate. So what have we been doing today around the collaborate? So we know technology, we know we're talking about ephemeralization, we're talking about technology, and we're saying at that moment, do we agree that technology is something that we would cooperate and collaborate on so we can distribute? Does that make sense?
Yep. Yes.
Now you have half of a word thought.
Mm-hmm.
Does everyone understand what I mean by half of the word thought? That's one tetrahedron.
Yes.
Okay, Manu, do you want to explain that?
Yeah, what's the one tetrahedron?
Cooperate, agreement, cooperate, and now you've got collaborate. You must collaborate as well, and then you have to distribute.
Yes.
That's a thought. That's just one thought.
Yes.
Now that's half of the
Unity.
thought.
Yeah, unity is plural and minimum of 2.
Minimum of 2. So
we need
cooperate-
8 words. We've defined 4.
Yes, exactly right. We need 8 words and we define 4. So when you're looking at it now, which one is macro? Is agreement macro and cooperate micro?
I would feel so.
Now we're going into fuller design people.
Agreement, micro.
What's micro?
Agreement.
Okay, in this context, Henry.
It's not.
It's macro, and then collaborate is micro.
Yes.
But I see both as both. I think agreement occurs micro and macro.
In this word system, you're developing a word system right now. And in this word system, if you're going to follow Fuller, he goes macro, micro.
Macro, yes.
So at this moment, agreement is the macro, cooperate is the micro.
Mhm.
That's your unity. And then you go collaborate. Okay, so we collaborated. Now what do we do? How many times have you heard people collaborating and then do nothing?
Yeah.
They don't work to commit. They don't commit to work within a boundary. They just want to work together, but they don't know what's the boundary.
Yeah. Well, we created the boundary by agreement.
Correct.
But we didn't bring in accountability, and we didn't bring in owning it.
Okay.
Because
So
if
we didn't
people
bring
didn't
in-
follow up, there was no real agreement to, there was no intention to fulfill the agreement.
People
Gotta
don't
own
hold
it.
the
have
agreement.
in the agreement, Peter.
Well, I agree, but if there wasn't follow up with it, then the agreement was lacking that.
Look, sooner or later, you have to agree on something. This is where it all goes awry. If you have an agreement, are you willing to be accountable and responsible for your agreement till you're not?
Well, the agreement it's the one that sets the boundary.
Exactly. So now you've got the boundary. Will that boundary change by everything that we've read about ephemeralization, everything that we've discussed? Will that boundary change? Could that boundary change?
It could.
It could.
It could.
It could. But
Depends on person's viewpoint at that point in time.
yes. Now, the reason why you've got to get a cooperation is otherwise it'll always be ephemeral, short-lived.
Yeah.
So you've got a system of thought. Okay, we've got this agreement. I sat down with Anne's group and I only had one thing in mind when I sat down on the floor with all their parties. And all I really wanted to know was who's going to own this? And could they get agreement on ownership? Because they had lots of people that wanted to invest. And who knows what? But said there's one thing you have to agree upon is ownership. Do you remember that, Anne?
Yep, yep.
And
Yes.
I said, define the ownership first. Now you have an agreement that you can cooperate with this group sitting on the floor. Now collaborate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? And the second you collaborated, then now distribute. Go out to the market and see what the market says. Did we do that?
Yes. It's
Eight.
taken us 5 years to come to this point of distribution.
Yes, eight years ago. But the only real thought was the agreement was who's going to own this. Simple
Yeah.
as that.
Correct. Mm.
And then you start your distribution, your cooperation, your collaboration. Now, if I'm looking at this as a word thought, and I'm with Manu, this is 4 words, I need 8 words.
Mhm.
And I would combine this to complete one word system of thought: time, timing, sequence, and lag. What do you think, Manu?
Yes.
Does everyone understand what we just did?
But I don't like it.
Well, too bad, Steve.
Well, I'm going to propose something.
No. I want people to understand. Sometimes you just have to say, you have to get an agreement
Yes.
To get started. Otherwise, you'll go nowhere.
Well, I totally agree with all that. And I want to come back to Peter's agreement or to Peter's comment, because there is no agreement, there is no cooperation without accountability and responsibility. And I think there's your other 4 words. I think timing, sequence, and lag talks about what the operation is, but without personal sovereignty, without accountability, without responsibility, and I'm even would add the word ownership in there.
Yeah.
I would think stewardship. Without that, there is no agreement.
What you're trying to do right now, Steve, is I couldn't agree with you more. But the thing is, you've got to get a combination of words for a system. The thing that you're talking about now is another 4 words, because don't forget, you're only looking at these things in groups of 8. Now, what you're saying is there might be another macro.
Well, I'm wondering how there is an agreement without accountability and responsibility.
That's absolutely another macro position. Now you've got to say, what's the macro position? You understand my point?
Barely. Keep going.
Okay, so at this moment, we could hardly agree that agreement was the macro. But in the 2 words, macro and cooperative or cooperate, agreement became the macro. But when you're looking at this thing now, and you're saying to yourself, what would the absolute macro thought be? So what's the macro thought, which is what you're alluding to right now?
Sovereignty.
So you could say sovereignty is the macro thought sovereignty.
Then accountability and responsibility, because those 2 things they're sisters of sovereignty to me, from my paradigm.
But if you're going to start and you're going to go to design and you're going to start to talk about an area, wouldn't you actually go biosphere?
Mm-hmm.
See what we're doing? We're just looking at it and saying, here's a word system of thought. And when you look at the word system of thought, are we able to get to agreement? Now, agree upon, what are you doing to get to that agreement? I mean, as you start to look at that, isn't it important that we start to understand? My first agreement is I want to live in an abundant world, into an abundant positioning for all. Right? Now, how do I get to that agreement?
Set up the boundary. What's actually abundance? What does it mean to be?
Yeah, well, set up the boundary. So what's the boundary you're going to set up? Is it going to be a swimming pool?
The boundary would be everyone gets fed, everyone gets shelter, everyone gets everything.
But what's that boundary?
Yeah.
Biosphere.
Remember the 22 years. You remember that?
Yeah, the
average
regenerative of metal.
Yes, but where are metals? Metals are not in Australia only. Metals are all over. So for you to consider that and to use that, that is the knowledge that you have. Now you have to reset what your macro is.
Exactly right. That's why macro, micro is so important.
Yeah.
You see, we're in the middle. When you look at the 4 words, we're in the middle of a design. And so when you're looking at this thing, can you get to the macro of the design? Well, it's like we're modeling the future. Thank you, CJ Lim. Right? Modeling the future. What does that mean? And so when we're agreeing to model that future, what are we modeling?
Something that hasn't happened yet.
What I would say to you is, like, I get exactly what you're saying, Steve, and I get this stuff around sovereignty, but sooner or later, we have to surrender to a greater something.
Well, you're modeling the concept of abundance.
Yes.
As opposed to Malthusian was a concept of scarcity. So you're doing the polar opposite of what's currently there.
And we've experienced it we've hit the wall. We say information, we have feedback from the biosphere of that model, because we've been using it for the last 100 years.
Now that talks about each individual.
Yeah.
What could we agree to? And on this call, we've got all kinds of different countries, all kinds of different circumstances, and to get an agreement to move forward and set up a word system of language so that you can say, look, this is how we're going to move forward. This is how we're going to get it done. And will it evolve?
Oh, yeah.
The very nature of precession, that's the whole thing of precession. You draw a line and you say, here's the line, start measuring, start calibrating. Now what do you do?
Okay, I'm agreeing with the whole conversation except for one foundational point. So, and I'm going to call upon John, if he's available to do this. I'm not sure that he is. There is no agreement without jurisdiction or authority. There is no agreement unless there's responsibility and accountability. To say I agree and not own my power to be accountable, responsible, and my jurisdiction over myself to choose. Sovereignty, accountability, and responsibility are foundational. They are prerequisites to an agreement. And I think what's wrong with our world today is everybody has agreed without owning their power to affect the situation. Until I own that I am the micro, that I'm the foundation of the universe, until I own that there's a universe and that I'm the universe and that you're the universe, you have sovereignty, I have sovereignty. Now I have jurisdiction and authority to make an agreement, to make a contract. And if I don't have that authority, it's all bullshit. And that's what's going on in the world today. Everybody's blabbing about this and blabbing about that, and nobody's being local. Nobody is owning their own authority. Nobody is being accountable and responsible. They're all looking at some philosophy to solve the world. Thank you for my rant.
Okay, so Steve.
Yes.
Haven't you just illustrated what everyone does?
Yeah.
What is that?
We have to stop ranting and you actually have to say, look, how do I get to an agreement? Define an agreement, no problem. But the thing is, we're looking at one word system. And all you've illustrated is you won't be able to do it with one.
Yes.
There's going to be many, many, many intertwining words and agreements that you put together. So if what you're talking about today, and you really get the thing around the sovereignty of the individual of what you agree to. Now, when I agree to something, I agree to it from my point of view, and I will stick to it, regardless of what it does.
So you're assuming that. I mean, I do contract law, and unless there's a meeting of the minds, and unless I can prove that my mind is stable and I'm accountable and responsible, you can void your agreement with me based on the fact that I am not accountable and responsible for my own experience. Okay. Jurisdiction and sovereignty are the foundation of any agreement.
Once again, you're illustrating the poor agreements on this planet.
Yes.
But I'm thinking that we are falling in the same trap here.
Absolutely.
Steve, you can't talk about agreement on its own, just agreement.
No.
Unity is plural at a minimum of two.
Define the two.
Okay, no, Steve, over the next few days, you've got collaboration coming up again, and you've got agreement. And that's exactly where this thing should be until you get to the next thing, because you're designing a system. To design that system, you have to understand accountability, responsibility. I get all of that. And I also get the being pragmatic about it. I mean, I can take it down to a gun on a starting line or a swimming pool, But now when you get it great up into the biosphere, how do you do it? That's really what it's about. So how are we going to do it? So Steve, we got next week. We're on collaboration again next week, and we're going to get into accountability and responsibility around collaboration. How's that? Okay. So with that, CJ, how do you feel and what do you take away? And by the way, we're going to be a little bit later today because we got fired up there. And well done. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Kelly. It's amazing discussion. A lot of things crosses my mind, and I see a lot of perspective. So what I got is a lot of realization when it comes to the distinction of the word. And what strikes me was a lot into our belief system, what we understand our world, and how can we also have the ability to put ourselves into the context of other peoples are living in different perspectives, and how do we come together having something called commonality. So that's a fascinating process, which I have a glimpse of it today. And I can see there are a lot of different thought process, understanding experiences here. And as I continue on with this, I hope I can contribute more. So to them, more from a space of learning. And that's the biggest takeaway, which is a lot of deep learning, deep thoughts about life and who we are and what we want to do in our lifetime. So I hope I've answered the question. Do I pass on to someone else?
Yes, you do. Yeah, it's impossible not to answer the question, Nate. It's right from you, which is exactly what Steve's saying. It's only you.
All right, cool. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Susan.
Thank you very much for everybody sharing and jumping into the process. I know that we're all kind of hitting it at a different speed. What I got out of today was the importance of stable datum. And here it is, we had 2 words, we had an hour and a half, and we're going to be on those 2 words again next week. Definitions are some of my favorite gifts. And I think it's one of the more intimate things that you can do with another human being is to really come to a mutual understanding on these concepts. So Steve, I applaud that you want to dive deeper. And for me, that's just a fractal, that's the fractal expanding into different dimensions. Peter, how do you feel and what do you take away?
Thank you, Susan. I'm feeling I'm feeling curious, actually. I have a great curiosity as to where this is going to go. I took a lot from today, but I normally have about anywhere between 12 and 20 pages of notes out of these calls, and today's I've only got 2. And the reason was I was engaged and in present moment with everyone, but a part of my beingness was in this boundary between science and spirit. And we have plenty of people in the world who want to take us down a pure scientific path, and there's those who want to take us down the other path. But I think it's a marriage that's going to solve it. And as an example of what I'm thinking about, there's a particular company that created Monsanto. They created, products that destroy the microorganisms in the soil, and they created another product that destroyed bees. And their answer was to create a little drone set of bees. Now that project started 15 years ago. They started creating artificial bees because they destroyed the bees. And to my mind, that's an example of, unless we individually bring our spirit to what we're doing, bring our humanity to it, because the arrogance of thinking that a little drone robot is going to replace bees, and if bees aren't here, guys, hate to break it to you, humanity ends. It's that simple. And I really do think we've got to individually and collectively get past our arrogance that we can out technologically maneuver any problem. But at the same time, in our humility, when we come to our humility, we come to our spirit, then we can use technology from a place of balance and integration and advancing humanity and making the world livable for everyone. So I'm in this wrestling match at the moment between, you know, I think doing more with less is fantastic. But I think if we lose the plot and don't bring our spirit to doing more with less, then we run the risk of either becoming transhuman and just putting our little consciousness in a robot and going, oh, we can live forever. And I think the initiation, I think of these times at the moment as an initiation. This is an initiation for the whole of humanity to find our spirit, and then from our spirit, make the world work for everyone. Catalina, how do you feel, and what would you like to take away today?
Thank you for not skipping me. I actually feel good, feel always very grateful for the rich exchanges, because it's within the exchange that it's the variety and the diversity that actually comes, fruition comes out of it. So enjoy the call and enjoy the realization that I know a little bit more than I think that I give myself credit to, and yet I have lots more to learn. So that's why these calls are so nourishing to the mind and to the soul, because the mind, it creates the richness of what it seems to be not only an intellectual conversation, but actually brings the spirit and the mind to interact together in a way that we actually nourish each other, even though perhaps we're not in the same space to actually touch each other and give a hug. But it's a way for us to express our appreciation for each of us individually showing up to contribute into this space. So, well, I can't really say there was one takeaway, but there's many takeaways. But I've just in a space of perhaps wondering and space to letting many things in space to settle, and an appreciation for the different thoughts, even though sometimes could challenge my own, because that's one particular space where I'm actually dealing with now. It's actually follow through what I say, to respect the different choice of other ones, even though I actually completely disagree with my own, because that would be, then I would be congruent with who I say that I am. So that's me. My friend Philemon, I haven't heard you today. Tell me, how are you? What did you take away today?
How am I? I wish this question gets asked to me on Thursday, because I have no right to be in this environment. And come Thursday, when I've gone out and the lag has shortened, and I start applying things and changing the language and the tone to suit what I'm experiencing. I just made two words one. Cool. Note that down. I then go, oh, that's what they were saying. Oh, I got that. Oh, yeah, I knew that. Geez, yeah, that's my normal. But in this environment, it's like I'm out in the ocean with a bunch of beautiful marlin and sailfish, and I'm this piranha just hunting around. I'm not going to say a puffer fish because they're too placid, but I'm just this little piranha that can hold his own, but has no idea what's going on up there. But then slowly I merge it into my week. Kelly, I met almost 2 years ago, or over 2 years ago. He actually said something to me which has stuck. He said that you need to increase vocabulary. So not being a learned person, really, no schooling and stuff like that, it sticks with me and it's true. And during the week after these calls is when I start learning the vocabulary from what I hear in this place through experience in it. But by then the ship has sailed as such. I don't contribute in the moment. And that's something I accept because I do go out there and play with it. But it's something also at the forefront of my mind is increasing vocabulary to communicate in the moment, on the moment. One thing I got was early on, Manu said something, not in the exact words, but he says, I don't like to give too much energy to what's happening globally. I want to assist in shaping locally. For almost 10 years, I've been saying, forget about global issues, focus on local issues. If it's global, I don't have much of an influence, but if I can influence local and then expand outwards, that will influence global. So just Manu put it in a different way, which I enjoyed. So yeah, I got lots out of today, but I won't tell you till Thursday. Henry, how do you feel and what did you get out of today? Henry.
Oh, sorry, I missed it, mate. Yeah, okay. All good, Philemon. Interesting call. I mean, it's good to know where you're at. So we start with Malthusian, we start with people's concepts on history and such forth, because you got to know where you're at, because that's your starting point, your net present position. What I got out of today was where we're going, what we're trying to do, and that's with trying to design, trying to create philosophy or a concept of abundance. We're going the polar opposite. We're battling the current systems, the current thinking, thought process of people. And this is what we're trying to do. We're defining it. And it comes back to your truth. And it comes to words. You know, Fuller would say, words are man's first industrial tools. That's why we're spending a lot of time defining the words, working it through. And that's how we're extending our vocabulary, by understanding how that works, which is good. It ultimately does come back to your truth. What do you believe? What do you see? What do you feel? How does that impact to you? And I like that concept that Manu's brought in about local. We as Bucky would say, you're on planet spaceship Earth. You're on one spaceship. It is local. Sovereignty is probably one of the things that is going against us. 250 different captains doing what they want to do with different resources. You know, that comes back to distribution. So it is precessional. This is the start. This is the start of the movement of the thought concept. So if we get our words together, we design that philosophy, we can push it out processionally and radiate from there. So it was good discussion. We worked through this and I can see it evolving, getting better, which is really cool. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you all for contributing. Joe, have you been?
No.
I have not.
Okay, Joe, how do you feel and what'd you get out of today, mate?
All right. Thank you, Henry. I feel good. I feel good. And I thought it was a great conversation. The thing that, I really have been thinking about most of the time here is the idea of distribution and the importance of distribution within a system. Because we were just talking about how, essentially it's not necessarily the scarcity of food or resources in certain cases, but it's how they actually get to people. And also the idea of just that you can't talk about agreement by itself, and just how challenging it is to actually come up with a definition for agreement. But I think we are closer to coming up with a set of definitions that gives us a system that we can work with and move forward with. So thank you again, everybody, for allowing me to join. And
Go to Anna. Go to Anna because she might lose.
Oh, sure. Hi, Anna. How do you feel?
Hi.
What do you like? What would you like to get out of the day? Or what
Okay,
did you
I'm
get out of
sorry,
the day?
I'm facing some internet issues here.
Sure.
Okay, I'm the collaboration is something good if it can be successful, but I find that collaboration also needs trust and respect to make it work. So well, I'm looking forward to that. That's all. Thanks. Thank you.
Pass it on.
And
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Okay. I feel with every meeting, I feel more ready, feel even more settled, to move forward. That's the odd thing. Feel settled to move forward. What is exciting actually is today we went through the process of truth altering. I went through it. Yeah, there were two very, very distinct moments there. One is that Manu, when you talked about local, and the idea of local just shifted for me, right? Normally it's like people keep saying this, think globally but act locally. But then with your definition, the truth just changed, that on the scale of the universe, then local is all of us together in this whole world. I mean, that's what I took away from it, right? I thought that was one of the most powerful things. We need to think of it that in the universe, we are local in this one planet of ours. It belongs to all of us. Yeah, it is not just global, right? Then the ownership of it, I think, would be much stronger for all of us. The other one is the truth, and the idea of defining and refining. Yeah, just by doing that, we are changing. The truth can alter, right? So the other one is, when Kelly, Henry pointed this out. When Kelly, you said that we are advancing technology, but we are not advancing. I'm like, wow, it's like, it is powerful. We can resolve that. We literally can make so many changes across the world just on this alone. Okay, so thank you very much. What I'll do is passing it on. Rafa, you've gone. Oh, Manu, Rafa is not gone. Right. How do you feel, and what did you take away today?
No, thank you, Anne. And terrific, great call, great discussion. It's amazing how a discussion of a couple of words can take us for a whole one and a half hours discussion around its understanding and agreeing on what those what words come together and why they come together. I think one of my main takeaways today is again our role on Spaceship Earth. When we talk about understanding the biosphere, because that's what we live in, we survive within the biosphere. And when we actually understand how the biosphere works, then we work proximally. That is, I work around my community, but again, I don't lose perspective. I still remember that I am part of a whole. So what I do has an impact on what happens in the biosphere, not just with me or my country. So I think we discussed it with Kelly before. We go from myself first, then there's family, then there's community, and then there's biosphere. So we go from community to country, and that way we get stuck because we think we can solve the problems at that level, country level. It's not going to work. On the contrary, I think we all agree that that level of sovereignty is working against us as a species. And so again, it's very important to have that level of agreement. Where we're going to work, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to cooperate, how we're going to collaborate, and how we're going to distribute. And that brings, again, many other words that will come together. I mean, we need the other 8 words to come together. And just to give you one example, when people come and talk about science, and science to me quite often is quite wrong. Just to give an example, there was a project in the UK to build a road, a much larger road near Stonehenge. And it was approved. The science said, we can do this. We're going to build a tunnel so we we won't have any impact in Stonehenge structure. It's a done deal. We've done all the work. And then the people, actually the community, they complained, and historians and people who want to preserve this level of heritage. And it's not just the UK. I mean, that's all of us. It's our heritage. I mean, it doesn't matter where we are, but what happened there thousands of years ago is still relevant today. But anyway, so this judge ruled very recently the road is not going ahead, simply because of one simple principle. You cannot guarantee that the structure will not suffer. And it's paramount that we protect the structure. Therefore, the road is a no-go. And it's all, again, common sense, isn't it? But you think, what courage did it do for that judge to take that decision, to go against all the science and all the money behind? And people come from with a different perspective, which is, for example, why build the road? Why don't we make the roads redundant and do something else? It's far more important to protect what we have, history, and again, we can apply that same principle to starvation and to all the problems we face today, health problems, the pandemic, etc. You think as a whole, understand precession. If we do this, what are the side effects? What's going to happen? And I think that we have to come to that level of agreement first as a species, if we are to make it. So I think the very concept of Bucky talking about spaceship Earth, he just created a concept, an idea to help us understand we are all in this together. And this group, again, we're all in this together, and we want to build an artifact or some language to take out of the world to actually make a difference. So very proud to be part of this. And grateful to everyone. So Stanley, how do you feel, mate? And what's your takeaway?
Thank you, Refer. Hi, guys. First of all, I feel amazing. I feel great to be part of the conversation. I'm grateful to be here. Well, how do I feel about the conversation? Well, to be honest, in the beginning, it felt like everyone is on a bullet train, on like this high-speed train, and I just jump right on it, before it even get to stop. So I'm like, whoa, you get what I mean? And everyone is traveling at that speed, and I'm doing my best to catch up. And as you guys were speaking on, contributing to the conversation, I was like, well, what is that? I was like Googling it. What is this? What is that? What is that? And I even asked a question on chat, on the context, on the micro and the macro. Well, I mean, because I look at things from my own experience, right? My own history and experience. So I was trying to make sense of things that were mentioned, and it's really interesting. Like to me, I look at how everything that we have, technology and concepts and philosophy, everything we are trying to mimic nature. We're trying to copy nature. Everything is some form of a copy of, imitation of nature. And when I look at ephemeralization, where you talk about getting more done with less, and this is actually what nature has been doing. Nature has always been trying to reach its own balance or equilibrium. And you can see it in animals, right? The bigger the animals, the less energy they need, the less food they need, the less oxygen they need per pound or per mass, per kilogram of mass. So it is in nature. And I feel that a lot of this concepts and all this solution that we're looking for can be found in nature by copying nature, by observing nature. And it's interesting to me, like how I feel that like we put connotations on what's negative and what's positive, but in actual fact, everything it's opposite sides of the same coin. So the fact that we are looking at a solution to what we are facing right now, the issues we are facing right now, like what's it called, the Malthusian, right? The Malthusian concept. That is thinking in like some of you guys have mentioned, thinking in terms of scarcity. So thinking in terms of scarcity, the opposite side of the coin will be thinking in abundance. So the fact that we are speaking about this and we are discussing about this today is because of the existence of the Malthusian principle. So we should give some sort of acknowledgement to that, in my opinion. And yeah, this is just some of the things that I've gotten. I'm moving forward. I hope that I can grasp more of the context of what we are talking about, and perhaps I could contribute more. But today I've just been sitting here, you know, as a role as an observer, which I'm really grateful for, and I'm grateful to be part of this conversation with all of you. And you guys are amazing. I'm so impressed by everyone's different perspective, and it blows my mind. I'm just like, wow, you know. And again, thank you for that. Really appreciate today. I'm gonna pass it on to Manu.
Yes, thanks, Stan. I really appreciate that you jumped on a bullet train. You can see that you didn't die. And you're talking and you're contributing. That's very important. Now, what I would like to kind of stress here is that we should be aware of the danger of halfness. What I mean by the danger of halfness is that I've realized that most of the time when we waste and discuss, we spend time discussing on the word, one word. No, unity is plural at minimum of 2. I can't talk of macro without talking of micro. The two always, they make sense together. Alone, they make less sense. So a word makes sense with association, relating to something. Now, when we come to the word, what we're trying, the artifact that we're trying to put together, and the datum, as Susan said, when we talk of agreement and cooperation, it's 2 words. It's like something like this. We talk of something that can relate. Say, for example, a rotation like this. Now we're gonna have other 2 words. And we're talking about measurement. You can only measure something that is finite. So you need 4 words to determine a tetrahedron that is minimum calibration, the minimum unit, the minimum volume, the minimum energy that you can measure. So we're gonna progress into this. So and then I come to that you know, I'm grateful that today we had agreement, cooperation, collaboration, and distribution. But we've discussed before time, timing, sequence, and lack. We can put the 2 together and start kind of having something that we can use to shape. And the very, very, very action of deciding comes with a risk. And the risk is casting forward onto something that will have to wait, lagging, for the feedback to be able to calibrate and measure. And that's something that I think is very, very powerful and very kind of progressive into helping us to achieve what we want to do. So with that, I'm grateful of the richness, the contributions, and Steve's, Steve.
Go to Johnny Butler first and then to Steve.
Oh, okay. No, but I was just going to comment that, you know, I'm really appreciative of Steve kind of questions and his interrogations. And you know, that is it. You can't be in the kitchen if there's no heat. Sometimes it's too hot, you have to jump out and take some air and come back into the kitchen. And this is the kitchen. So John B, I don't know where you went to, but you jump back onto the bullet train. How do you feel? What do you take away from this call?
I'm glad to have been part of today's call and to have had some old thoughts brought back into my consciousness. I mean, I think I was first exposed to defibrillation about 30 years ago, but it's good to be reminded of it and to be reminded of the unconscious beliefs of scarcity sometimes and of what we're aiming to achieve and thinking about how can I apply ephemeralisation in my own life, in my own business. So it's always good to be reminded to go back and to review what you think and what you believe and how you can work towards what you want to achieve. So very worthwhile for me for that for today. Steve's next, is he, Kelly?
Absolutely. I'm
Steve,
sorry everyone
how
else
are
is
you
gone, but Steve?
What did you take out today?
Well, I got to tell you, first of all, I am really grateful for Anne and her team, the way they've jumped in on this thing. Wow. I've been doing this for at least a year, maybe a year and a half or something. I don't know. It seems like forever. And, you know, I'm just starting now to get, every once in a while, my head bobs up above the waves and I can actually breathe. So you guys, I like the bullet train analogy, being slammed back in your seat, right? But I got to tell you, you have a great team, Anne. And I want to acknowledge each one of you guys for being on here because you have just jumped into the thick of it. I was going to say jumped into the manure or the shit or the cow farts, but I'm not going to say any of that because that would sound like Philemon. I'm just going to say you've jumped into the thick of it. And wow, do I acknowledge you guys. And what a journey this is and how honored I am to be part of it. John, there was a time there when I was looking for your support on an issue, but I could tell it was perfect because look, this is the longest this airplane's been up in the air I think I've ever been here. This is the longest. And so we're winning an award tonight. And when I hand this over to Kelly, it's all on him. The last time we went over, it was my gig. So I thought maybe it's not on you and I don't really care. So I'm really honored to be here. I want to say that I think Peter is right on with this thing of responsibility and accountability. I think Raffers reaffirmed it when he talked about everything starts locally, because that's what I can change and affect. I think we have kind of a consensus on that. I'm really looking forward. I don't think sovereignty is the problem. I think sovereignty is the solution. Understanding what sovereignty and authority is, understanding universe, macro and micro, and story, that is the first thing. And John, I tried to enroll you in that, and maybe we'll do it in the coming weeks. I'm just honored to be here. This is foundational. This conversation is critical, and I'm honored to be here. Kelly, did we get Susan yet?
Yes.
We got Susan?
We did.
Okay, I guess, great. So Kelly, how are you feeling? What's your takeaway today?
Well, I'm agitated that we're 27 minutes over because that goes against, I can live with 15, but 27 is getting a little bit wide. To me, the absolute thing about it is boundaries. We have to understand boundaries, and every decision has a boundary. And I get that it's really hard to get agreement on everything. But the first thing you have to always agree on is the boundaries that you're setting, in my view. So set a boundary, and then you can get your agreements. And, you know, this idea of my sovereign right, I do believe that in this group, I have a sovereign right. But I'll tell you what, as a beingness on this planet, I would debate sovereign right all day long, because we're screwing it up as a beingness. And, when we write books like the stuff around Homo Deus and stuff, where we're all going to be machines and they're going to tack shit onto us, I'm just not in for that. I believe that we have a beautiful design. We should start acknowledging our beautiful design and our purpose and our function here. I'm not really into this idea of strapping on a patch over my eye so I can see everything. I get that we can do that, but I don't think, the word that I like the most on the call is spirit. My spirit, my ethos, who I am. That's who I want to be. I don't want to be this guy with gadget arms, go gadget. I want to be a guy contributing from my own design. And so I understand that I do have sovereignty in this group, but I'm very doubtful about that as a design for the whole planet. I think that there's a lot more going to it than that. So anyway, that's debatable. I apologize. We're 29 minutes over, and Steve, I take full responsibility and I'm fully accountable for that extra 30 minutes. And, you know, it is what it is. So thank you to everyone for being on the call. And yeah, I'm into ethos. So thank you, Manu. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Great call. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye everybody. Thank you.
Well,